Welcome back to another healthHackers review video. This one is all about Bristle, a saliva test meant to analyze the levels of good and bad bacteria in your mouth and then give you personalized recommendations around products, hygiene habits and diet so that you can treat the root cause of issues like tooth decay, bad breath, receding gums and more. In this video, I will tell you about my test experience, I'll show you my results and play you my interview with Bristle's co-founder, David Lin. I had questions for him about the product that might be helpful for you if you're deciding whether or not to give this test a go. And then later, I'll wrap up this video by outlining my likes and dislikes about my experience with the Bristle oral health test. But first, 3 important points to make. Number 1, if you're new to the healthHackers channel, hello, I'm Gemma, I'm a journalist, I review wellness innovations, and I interview pioneering people in health. If you enjoy this video, I'd love it if you hit the like button or even subscribe and leave me a comment below. Number 2, anything on healthHackers should not be considered personal or medical advice. Talk to your healthcare providers about you. And number 3, I take pride in being transparent with you, so you should know that the Bristle Oral Health Test Kit was sent to me for free. The company has also given me a discount code with a link for you, healthHackers viewers. If you make a purchase, I receive an amount at no extra cost to you. Be assured my product reviews are honest. I tell you what I like as well as what I do not like about the products that I review. You can check out the summary text that goes with this video for details on your Bristle discount and more about how these affiliate arrangements work from my perspective. So here's how the saliva sample taking happens for the Bristle test. It's pretty straightforward. My kit arrived in the mail. I scanned a barcode to activate some instructions. I had to register the kit online where I answered questions about things like how often I brush, floss, have I or a family member ever experienced cavities, gingivitis, heart disease, depression and other health questions, as well as outline any medications I take and how much sugar or alcohol I consume. Once registered by entering a code from my sample collection container, it was time to spit into a tube. But I had to be careful about timing, no eating, drinking or smoking 30 minutes beforehand. Bristle recommended doing it first thing when you wake up in the morning. So here's me in my dressing gown at about 6:45 a.m. setting up a little funnel supplied by Bristle that leads into the collection tube. I needed to fill it halfway with saliva. You don't need to see me doing that bit. Then, after inverting the tube up to 10 times, it was time to place it in the bag provided and mail it back to Bristle to be analysed. To give you an idea of how long it took to get my results back, I had an email from Bristle on October the 27th to say my sample had been received. Then, November the 1st, an email to say it was undergoing extraction. November the 8th, another email to say it was undergoing sequencing. Then on November the 10th, an email to say my results were ready. So it was a couple of weeks from when my sample had been received, and here are my results. I'm showing you the summary page to start with. Remember, this is all about the levels of beneficial and harmful bacteria in my saliva. When it comes to bad bugs, it says the lower the score, the better. So regarding halitosis, it says my score was 0.3, which means a low abundance of bacteria related to halitosis. Gum inflammation, that was low, and you can see the list of specific bacteria Bristle says is related to those issues. Here's tooth decay, 0, hooray! It seems that my abundance of microbes related to tooth decay compared against patients diagnosed with tooth decay was undetected. So that was nice to learn. Now let me show you the good bugs in my sample, also known as the commensals. These are microbes said to be linked to good health outcomes. I ranked as moderate and my diversity was low. I later discovered that, according to Bristle, a very low or high diversity score can be a sign of oral microbiome dysbiosis. It seems having an average diversity score is good though. Elsewhere in my results was a page called My Raw Results, with the words being investigated next to some of the species listed. I didn't fully understand what I was looking at here, but that is something I addressed in my interview with David, which is coming up shortly. Stay with me for that. Now here at the bottom of the page, you can see my personalised recommendations. So, eat foods high in nitrate. It says nitrate has been shown to modulate the oral microbiome and reduce levels of anaerobic bacteria that cause bad breath. You can see it gives me examples of foods containing nitrates and some research references below, which feels validating. Other recommendations for me included adding omega-3s, I already take those, tongue scraping, I already do that, and chewing xylitol gum. Something I learned is apparently standard for all users of this test is a free session with what Bristle calls an oral health coach. Mine was with a dental hygienist named Nada. It was about 30 minutes long. She went over my results and I asked about aspects I was confused on. For example, Nada could see more personalized recommendations for me than were showing up in my Bristle account. I'll show you what I mean here. So you can see Nada's sharing her screen in our consultation, and there are specific probiotic recommendations for me. But when I log into my recommendations in my Bristle account, I don't see all of those. Nada wasn't able to tell me why that was happening in our session, but after the call, she sent me my PDF care plan with recommended products and practices for me. I'll mention a couple of points about that later. For now, I want to play you my interview with one of Bristle's co-founders, David Lin. We covered quite a bit, including how does he know Bristle test results are true and correct? Does Bristle have financial relationships with the brands it recommends in the customer care plans? And I wanted to know, how receptive have dentists been to these test results? But I began the interview by asking David if he has perfect oral health, and if not, why not?
That's a great question. So the answer is no. My oral health is not perfect. I think one of the main reasons is I just had a baby, and one of the first things that collapses, unfortunately, is oral health. Just kind of the keeping up the same routine all the time is pretty tough. But even before then, I didn't have perfect oral health. I never had signs of gum disease. I didn't have many cavities, actually, but I had really bad habits. And so there's a really interesting thing happening where it turns out my oral microbiome wasn't that bad to start with. I'm not exactly sure why. It could have been from my parents, something that I was seeded with. But my oral microbiome managed to keep me relatively healthy. So I didn't have that many cavities, even though I had really bad oral hygiene.
I sympathize with the just having a baby because I have a 10-and-a-half-month-old. How old is yours?
Mine just turned 9 months, so congratulations.
Congratulations to you too. Is it your first?
This is my first. How about you?
First time. And I took floss and a tongue scraper to hospital with me to give birth.
That's fantastic. I did not. I was rushed. It was the middle of the night, and we were like, "Where's the bag? Let's just go."
Yeah, no, we had prep time. We had to have a C-section. So I was able to pack my bits because I have a great dentist who is really supportive of encouraging great oral health. So I made sure I packed those items. Right. I was reading one of your web pages and where you say the latest research and theories suggest that the oral microbiome is responsible for maintaining oral health. But it's not often you visit a dentist and have a chat about your microbiome health. So for anyone who's new to this, can you tell us a bit about what you mean when you refer to the oral microbiome and its impact on us?
Yeah. So recently, a lot of research has shown that the microbes that live in your mouth, which are the bacteria, the fungi, and the viruses, they're actually really important for helping you maintain your health. So two of the most prevalent diseases on the planet, which are cavities and gum disease, are entirely caused by bacterial infections. So just for instance, cavities are caused by these karyogenic species like Streptococcus mutans because they can turn sugar into acid. Acid erodes enamel. And on the other hand, gum disease, which I think the current statistics is something like 60% of people over 50 years old or something have some form of gum disease. It's something entirely crazy, but it's a little more complicated, where there's dozens of different types of bacterial species that live at your gums, and sometimes they invade your tissue. And they eventually cause bone loss, which leads to periodontal disease, and that is unfortunately basically irreversible, and a lot of people have their teeth pulled and replaced with implants and dentures because of this kind of bacterial infection. And so those are basically two reasons that the oral microbiome can cause disease. But on the other hand, they're also really important for maintaining your health. And so recently, within the last decade or so, a lot of studies have shown now that specific bacteria in your mouth can reduce nitrate. And that reduction of nitrate actually influences the rest of your body. So it improves cardiovascular health, cognitive health, and there's some studies that demonstrate that it may be important for athletic function. So some elite runners may have different oral microbiomes because they have a better microbiome that can reduce nitrate.
Yeah, I find the whole microbiome area just fascinating. All the microbiomes, the skin, the gut. So my impression of the whole point of the Bristle saliva test is to show people if they've got too much of the bad bacteria in their mouths that could lead to cavities and gum disease, etc. And then you try and help them prevent those issues from developing. If my simplified understanding is correct, how do you at Bristle know that the test results are correct, and what's the level of accuracy?
Yeah, really good question. And I wish more people thought about the science behind the test, because there was really a lot that went into developing the test to make it accurate. So just describe what we've done is we've looked at hundreds of patients who came to a local clinic, which is the University of Pacific. So it's a dental clinic. It's also a teaching hospital. And what we did was we looked at all the oral microbiomes in the people who came into the clinic. And fortunately, what we have is the ability to match their oral microbiome with their clinical records. And so you can see whether or not this person had cavities, where the cavity was, how much decay there was versus their microbiome, and same for gum disease. So how severe was their gum disease? Was it localized? Was it more systemic? And then we got to look at their microbiomes. And because of that, we basically used a little bit of machine learning, a little bit of computer stuff to basically look at what was driving the difference between people who have gum disease versus who don't, and the people who have cavities versus the people who don't. And so that's where the Bristle was born. And that's why it's accurate, because we have clinical records.
So you're running people's saliva through a kind of algorithm that shows them where they are in terms of like the risk of gum disease and everything else.
Yeah. So we look at your microbiome compared to a spectrum of all the other microbiomes, and we say it's closest to this person who happens to have periodontal disease and is X age and is a man, and that puts you at a certain risk for having gum disease. And because of your microbiome profile, we think you can shift it in a certain direction that will make it so you're less likely to have gum disease in the future. We want it to look more similar to someone who doesn't have gum disease and maybe is the same age and the same gender. And
are you continually updating the skill of that algorithm? Like, is the data getting broader?
Absolutely. So that's the beauty of the platform of actually a lot of what we've built is that it's kind of self-learning, and it's constantly improving because we're gathering more information from dental clinics and from our users. So our users are answering surveys and they're telling us, hey, I've been using this mouthwash and it doesn't really work for me, and I have this microbiome. And the same for diseases and other types of things.
So are my results and are all the users' results going back into the information for the algorithm?
Yeah, essentially, yes. The idea is that there's kind of a network effect in that as you contribute to the database, it's constantly growing. And so as you take more tests, you're actually improving our algorithm, our ability to improve your health, because we're getting more information behind your behaviors and how your microbiome has shifted from one test to another.
So there was one thing I didn't quite understand. In my results, there was a page titled Raw Results, and it was described as, quote, a summary of all the microbes we uncovered in your oral microbiome and their relative abundances. Many of the listed species had the words being investigated next to them.
Yes.
What does that mean? Tell me more about what that meant.
So microbiology is really complicated. It turns out that, so we've been studying microbes for several centuries now. And unfortunately, most of them we still don't know anything about. We've detected them. We've found them in people's mouths, in different types of samples, in the soil. but it's really difficult for us to understand how they function or what they're doing in a microbiome. So, I mean, like on one end of the spectrum is like Streptococcus mutans, where we know what it does is it produces a biofilm and then it turns sugar into acid so that it can invade your teeth, and that's where it lives. It really likes living on your enamel. But then on the other end, there's these other types of species that may be like Veillonella species. These ones are very difficult to grow in a lab, so that makes it really hard for us to study them. So we don't know what they're capable of doing, and so we can't really extrapolate kind of what they're doing in a microbiome. But one thing we're doing at Bristle is trying to look into this in a broader perspective. So if we look at a whole community of microbes, how are those affected by your health and your diet and the different types of things that you're doing for your oral hygiene routine. But the reason that they're investigated is we don't know a lot about these microbes.
So really, you're still learning, and will the information to users, will that continually update, or is it you get your results, that's what you see, and you won't be putting any more information into that?
No, we're constantly updating it. We're not only updating those microbes, the things that we learn about the microbes, we'll write little blurbs about them, or if there was recent research about a species, maybe what it's implicated in. But also the things that we can tell you about your health just from looking at your microbiome. So we're also looking at new scores. So recently we released a thing called the diversity score, which tells you a little bit about how many different types of microbes are in your mouth. And we're constantly giving the users who have taken a test a long time ago new features to look at.
I'm pretty sure it was my dentist who told me about Bristle, and
Yes.
but not every dentist may be as informed about this test as her. So do you encourage people to share the results with their own dentist, and how receptive have you found dentists to be to Bristle test results?
I really like this question because a lot of our users really like to share their results with their dentist, hoping that this will help inform more treatment plans, like very personalized treatment plans. So far, we've actually had pretty good reception. A lot of dentists, they are aware of the microbiome, but they're not aware that our test actually exists. So they may have heard of certain cavities causing species, or they may have heard of different gum disease causing species. But to date, there really weren't any comprehensive methods to look at them until the Bristle test came out. So we always encourage our users to share it with dentists because it's going to help you improve your oral health.
After getting my results, I had the complimentary session with one of your oral health coaches, and she then emailed me a care plan afterwards. In that care plan, there were specific product recommendations. So for example, a brand of xylitol gum, a type of nanohydroxyapatite toothpaste. Of all the companies that make xylitol gum and hydroxyapatite dental products, what makes Bristle choose to recommend the specific brands that it does in that care plan?
Really good question. So we look at all the ingredients. We've done all the research, and that's the main reason. We pick the cleanest products whenever we can. We also it's not just about the cleanliness of the products, it's also about matching it to your microbiome. So there may be certain chews or certain lozenges that could be better for your microbiome if you're missing certain species that we think are beneficial, or if you're high in certain species that we think should come down. And that's kind of the domain knowledge of Bristle. It's that we've read almost every paper about oral health, all the research, we looked at all the ingredients, and those happen to be the ones that we choose because of that.
And just for full transparency, does Bristle have financial relationships with those brands that it recommends in their care plans?
No. So for the most part, no. I think we may have affiliate relationships with, actually, I don't think we have affiliate relationships with almost any of the companies. We're actually hoping to produce our own, at least probiotics, because we haven't really found anything that is perfect as an oral probiotic, and we'd like to come as close as possible. So we really don't make anything from recommending those products.
And it must be hard to find those products. It's interesting that you say you might be bringing out your own probiotic, because I noticed, so in one of the gums, the gum recommendation, for example, the other ingredients, as well as xylitol, there was like sucralose, hydrogenated soybean oil, which to me would be questionable ingredients for gut microbiome health. I'm no expert, but I can see how tough it is for you to find the best products to recommend to different people with those limitations.
Yeah. So we've heard this a lot from our users, actually. It's that the platform right now, our care plans and the things we recommend aren't personalized enough. So some people may have certain things about their health that affect the things that they can eat, and we don't currently ask questions about them, right? But in the future we will. So we're really trying to get towards as close to personalized health as possible. But right now it's pretty difficult, because oral health and overall health is a very wide range of what I like to call outliers. Everyone is unique. Everyone has their own set of symptoms and preferences, and so that makes it really hard to match the exact treatment for everybody, which is kind of why we have these coaching calls. So we try to ask questions about, are you sensitive to sucralose? Do you prefer products that are a certain flavor even? And eventually, we'll be closer to personalization, to real personalization.
Yeah, I think I remember your health coach talking to me about nitrate gummies and me questioning the ingredients, and then she said, well, you could just eat beets. Like,
Yes.
there are other options. You don't have to do everything we say, which makes total sense.
Yes.
Let's talk about the cost. So $189. How do you come up with a price tag for a product like this?
Yeah, so that was really challenging. We recently had a price hike. Unfortunately, it's just the nature of having a company. But one of the things that was a really big priority for us at Bristle was to decentralize the test, is to try and get into as many hands as possible, because one of the missions was actually to improve oral health in the places where people don't care about their oral health. And in my ideal world, I would actually give the test away for free. And I would say, everybody needs this. Like, as you're growing up, you're not even aware of some of the germs that kids are spreading to each other and why they're causing cavities, why all these kids have cavities. But the reason that we came up with 189 is, unfortunately, financially, that's the only way that Bristle will survive.
For your costs to run your company, do your research, pay your staff.
Exactly.
And how often should somebody take a test?
So that is dependent on the individual. So most of the time we recommend twice a year, which is the normal cadence of a dental checkup. But what we're finding is that some people may need more frequent check-ins, especially if you have lingering symptoms of bad breath or of gum disease or cavities, and you really want to know, did I solve my problem, right? Like, did I really get rid of all the strep mutans? Did I get rid of all the P. gingivalis? Is it at low enough levels now? And the only way you'll know is by testing again. And so most of the time, what we're finding is that microbiomes can shift within maybe 3 months, depending on kind of patient compliance and the types of things that have happened in your life. So, there may have been, you may have had a deep clean, you may have gone to the dentist, and that will dramatically shift your microbiome. You may have changed your diet completely. Maybe now you're a vegan and you used to eat a lot of meat. Maybe you could test sooner, because that's a really big shift that'll cause a lot of change in the microbiome. And people who are at low risk, maybe you don't even need a 6-month checkup. Maybe you only need it once a year, because you actually have no oral health problems and you have a really good hygiene routine. No symptoms. There really isn't that much of a reason to check.
You mentioned if somebody became vegan there. Is there a big diet component to how you see your recommendations going forward?
I would really like diet to be a huge component of Bristle, because we do know the diet is a major component of shifting microbiome communities. So if we look at all the research for the gut, you can see that most of the recommendations people make are dietary changes. And there's a reason for that. It's because the microbes, they only survive on the things that you eat. And so the things you eat shape everything in your body. One thing we're struggling with right now is I don't think we have large enough sample size of how diet changes the oral microbiome, because there isn't that much research about it. And internally, we just don't have kind of the power to do that yet. Hopefully soon we will. We're going to start asking questions to our users about, what kind of diet you're on, what's the frequency of eating sugar, stuff like that. And hopefully we'll find a really strong signal of a certain direction of certain microbiomes of, you can shift them to a better microbiome if you eat a certain food. Who knows what the science will say, but that's my hope.
But at the moment, the information just isn't there yet, and everybody is unique, like you said.
Yeah. The reason for the lack of the power is that everybody eats a very different diet. And so you may have, a sample size of 2 people who are eating a certain food all the time and say, yeah, like I changed my microbiome and now I'm really healthy. But is 2 people enough to say, if you have this microbiome, you should eat this food? Who knows? We still don't know yet.
So there's really no one diet that you could recommend.
The one thing I can recommend right now is probably eating beets. We do know the power of high nitrate foods, and beets are very high in nitrate.
So I'm curious, if somebody already follows the recommendations that Bristle suggests for oral health, is there any point in taking the test? Because presumably they already do all they can to enhance oral microbial health.
That's an interesting question. So the recommendations change all the time. What I mean by that is it depends on your microbiome, because your microbiome can shift. Things change in your life. You may get sick. You get older. Inevitably, people age, and that means the physiology of their gums and their teeth changes. And so that means that things out of your control, just the nature of time passing, can cause shifts in the microbiome. And so I always advocate to check and see what's going on in your mouth. And then if you find that something is going on, then we can implement some kind of change depending on what that is. And if not, if you take a test and we find that you're actually really healthy, then I think, personally, peace of mind is invaluable.
Can you give us any examples of users who have turned their oral health around?
Yeah, I can give a few. I think top of mind, one thing that a lot of users come to us for is persistent bad breath. It's really interesting because we actually find that most people don't really think about their oral health that much until there's an issue. And usually that issue is I have bad breath and I don't know why it's not going away. Most people, if they brush and they floss normally, they don't have that many cavities, or they may not, have gum disease, or may not realize they have gum disease, or that certain symptoms of gum disease are not normal, but bad breath is very noticeable. So people come to us for that. And so I can give an example of somebody who had persistent bad breath. They came to us, they had very high levels of this bacteria is called Enterobacter. It's actually it's a species that's really prevalent, usually in the gut, but sometimes it's found in the mouth. And after we found that, we said, well, you should use this probiotic that has Lactobacillus reuteri, and you should be eating a xylitol chew right before it, and then make sure you tongue scrape and use a different probiotic in the morning. So one of them is basically for depleting the bad stuff, and the other one's for repopulating with good stuff. And then the Enterobacter went away. It wasn't completely gone, but it went down significantly, and their symptoms went away. Something that's a little, More tractable is someone who came to us with very high levels of cavities, so they had constant tooth decay. Because halitosis really isn't a recognized disease, it's kind of a symptom of other things going on in your mouth. This other woman came to us, she had cavities all the time. She was actually going to the dentist. She said she was spending, I think, like $5,000 every year out of pocket because of getting fillings all the time. And her dentist never told her why that was the case, why you get cavities. Nobody ever told her. And she looked it up and she found us, and then she had very high levels of Streptococcus mutans, and I think she had maybe 2 other acidogenic species. And we gave her a care plan to solve that. And I really like this story because at her last dental checkup, so she used to go every 3 months because of this very high level of decay, but at her last checkup, the dentist said there's no reason for you to come at your next 3-month checkup because you have no cavities.
So now that you've seen my interview, you've heard me explain my saliva sample taking process, you've seen my results and personalized recommendations, it is time to round up my likes and dislikes about the Bristle oral health test. We'll start with my dislikes. Firstly, when my personalized recommendations initially showed up in my account, I realized I already did at least half of them, and of the ones I wasn't already doing, like chewing xylitol gum or eating nitrate chews, Bristle had recommended some specific products for me that had additional ingredients I wasn't really comfortable with from an optimal health perspective. You heard me touch on it with David in my interview, and fair enough, those ingredients aren't Bristle's fault. I also brought it up in my oral health coaching call, and the care plan I was sent afterwards did have an alternative nitrate supplement recommendation in there for me. Next, every one of 6 individual recommendations that I could see in my Bristle account said it helped with bad breath. But my score on the halitosis section was low, 0.3, so I wouldn't have thought breath needed to be such a focus area for me. But it may be every good oral hygiene recommendation helps with bad breath by default. And you heard David suggest in the interview that they're trying to make recommendations more personalized in the future. Thirdly, I would like to understand more about how to increase my diversity score, because that's where I can see needs improvement. Nowhere in my PDF care plan was the word diversity mentioned. It did list an oral probiotic, and we spoke about probiotics, one that can dissolve within the mouth, in that coaching call. I've sent an email asking about the best way to increase my diversity score, because I don't think I directly asked that during the coaching call. And at the time of recording this video, I haven't had a reply yet, but I hope to find out more. I also really wanted to understand more about the species on my raw results page, what they meant for my mouth, my health. However, as David suggested, a lot remains unknown within microbiology, and it's encouraging that he said they're constantly updating their information based on recent research. My final dislike. Call me pernickety, but I felt this was worth mentioning. When I got my results, I wanted to share them with my dentist, and I needed to share them with NADA for the coaching call. So I had to add email addresses to my account to allow them access. I get it, it's information protection, but it would have been more convenient from a user point of view if the Bristle coach had access to the Bristle results without the Bristle user needing to make it happen ahead of the call. Okay, now it's time for my likes about the Bristle oral health test. First up, authenticity. During my interview with David, I got the sense that he genuinely cares about emerging research into the oral microbiome, what it means for our health and how improving it might help people save money on their dental bills. And sure, I know, it's a business, he has to make money, but take, for example, the way he answered my question about how they came up with the cost of the Bristle test. He could have palmed me off with a load of business jargon waffle. He didn't. His response felt human. And I like startups and companies that feel authentic and appear to have passion as well as compassion within their field. Next, it's built on science. David talked about their study for how they developed the test. I'll put a link for more on that, including information on accuracy, in the summary text that goes with this video. I also noticed that the personalized recommendations in my results report came with examples, research references, and a confidence ranking for that recommendation, which is said to be based on internal research, clinical evidence, and consultation with oral health experts. Thirdly, David said Bristle does not have financial relationships with the brands it puts forward in the care plan product recommendations. Even if it did, that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. I have affiliate relationships with some of the brands I review on healthHackers with honesty and transparency. But for Bristle, as a broader business operation than healthHackers, it was refreshing to hear. Next, I see Bristle as a tool that helps people to help themselves. I took the test at home. I didn't need a dentist to order it, and the recommendations were all things I could fairly easily do. I also think it's smart how I and other users contribute to the information that's supposed to help improve the Bristle algorithm. As David explained in the interview, as users take more tests, it's providing further information behind behaviors and how people's microbiomes are shifting from one test to another. Bristle and its growing database actually reminded me a bit of the Zoe personalized nutrition program I've previously reviewed on healthHackers. Check out my review videos on that if you're open to providing a poop sample, blood test, and wearing a glucose monitor to come up with personalized diet recommendations. Anyway, my final like about the Bristle test, my results. I liked what I saw, and so did my dentist. It was her who told me about the test in the first place. Shout out to Dr. Jen Chang in Sunnyvale. But come on, a 0 score for tooth decay? Of course, I was happy to see that. Before I go, I want to add that the Bristle test didn't tell me anything groundbreaking about my oral health. Maybe because things are going okay for me right now in my mouth. However, I can understand why other users with significant and expensive oral health and dental issues might see this test as a great investment. You heard about the lady David spoke of toward the end of our interview. And given the possible links between oral health and impacts on other parts of the body, like potential heart disease, strokes, pregnancy complications, and more, if Bristle continues to evolve and become smarter with more user data, who's to say it couldn't go far beyond helping mitigate issues inside the mouth? That's it. If you found this episode interesting or useful, I would love it if you hit the like button or subscribe and leave me a comment below. It means a lot to me when you support my work and give feedback in that way. If you decide to use the healthHackers discount and take a Bristle test yourself, I'd love to hear how you get on, what you made of the experience, and whether following your recommendations changed your oral health for the better. In the meantime, I'll be working on eating more nitrate-containing foods and looking into improving that diversity. If I take another Bristle test one day, I'll keep you updated on my Instagram account @healthHackers. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.